My name is Ashley Jackson. I am a harpist, and I began playing my instrument when I was 6 years old. I was introduced by my first piano teacher. I've had a life in music really ever since. I studied classical harp at Yale University and then at Juilliard for my doctorate, and I've been now teaching full time at Hunter College, music, of course, while maintaining a performing and recording career.
If you think about your musical influences and kind of tracing your journey so far, can you kind of single out some breakthrough moments that things gelled for you professionally?
I like to think about the first time where I kind of felt like, okay, this is what I want to do with my life. And so I was in high school and it was my first concerto. It was a Howard Hanson serenade for flute and harp. And I was sitting backstage working on my homework. And when it was time to come out, I remember sitting down at my instrument, hearing the strings behind me, and just feeling like, okay, you know what? I think I want my life to always be surrounded by music.
Awesome. Were there a few other moments, do you think, or was that really it for you personally? I mean, everyone has a different
Yeah,
story, obviously.
sure. I mean, for me, that was really, sort of confirmed for me that I was going to pursue music in a professional way. I think maybe another sort of turning point for me was as I was finishing up my work at Juilliard as a doctoral student, I was researching the life and music of Margaret Bonds. And that was also a pivotal moment in that I sort of found my first role model. Even though she's no longer with us, I saw in her a woman, a mother, a composer who was dedicated to using her talents to uplift and sort of spread the joy of her own community. And I think ever since then, I've wanted to commit my own musical career to doing just that, to bringing different kinds of audiences together.
In terms of musical influences that shaped your sound that you have as an artist, as a harpist,
Yeah.
who are those influences?
Oh my goodness. I grew up with such a varied musical landscape, so to speak, and so all of it factors into how I feel music, how I interpret music, and so we're talking about. I grew up in the Baptist church, so hearing that very sort of soulful, improvisatory, emotional connection to music definitely still reverberates in what I do and the choices that I make. I also grew up listening to my parents' music, so jazz and soul music, especially those soul singers, their phrasing and the commitment to what the words mean is something that I also try to tap into, and really just that melting pot of music, still factors into the choices of repertoire that I make.
If you could pinpoint one significant performance, it doesn't have to be the fanciest venue or the most, the biggest crowd or anything, but something that really
Mm.
spoke to you significantly as an artist.
Something that I was involved in, or
Yeah, where you were
okay,
the artist
okay,
on stage. Yeah, it's where you were like either the soloist or part of an ensemble or something like that,
yeah.
but that really spoke to you.
Well, it's not a specific moment, but I used to play a lot of orchestral work. I was fortunate to travel around the world playing with different orchestras as an orchestral harpist and subbing with the New York Philharmonic. And anytime we had multiple harps, so whether it was Mahler 6 with the New York Phil or playing Mahler 2 over in China with the conservatory over there, I don't know, that kind of camaraderie is rare for us to have that sense of a section, and working together as harpists. Most of our work is really done alone. So those moments I always treasure.
Let's take a quick break. If you're a classical musician, you know that talent alone is not enough to be seen and heard in today's marketplace. You need visibility. Over the past 15 years, I've worked as a brand strategist in classical music, working with artists and organizations, building that visibility for them. I've helped artists win Grammy Awards and nominations, such as Jesse Montgomery and the Miró Quartet, and I've helped Yoon Chan Lim achieve global stardom through my work at the Cliburn. If you're a classical musician looking for that visibility to propel you forward to attain better engagements, reach out because I'd love to explore working with you. Simply tap the link below to explore more and schedule a time to speak with me. Now, back to the conversation. Let's talk about your new album. I know I got, for the listeners who don't know, I got a
Yeah.
chance to hear you back in November for this preview event, and it was wonderful. And that's how I was
Thank
introduced
you.
to your work. And now the album is out, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct.
So why don't you kind of give our listeners the breakdown of what it is, why you did it,
Mhm.
etc.
So, Take Me to the Water is an album that looks at really different representations of water and how it is a vehicle for understanding connections between different cultures. I wanted to choose music from different points in my life, different styles of music. So we go from Debussy to Alice Coltrane to Margaret Bonds, and of course, some spirituals that are sung during baptism. Again, I want to give my listeners a reminder that we have a choice. We can let water be something that divides us or something that can bring us together. And that's really what's at the heart of this album.
I love that. And can you break down some of the tracks and how you went about compiling the different repertoire?
Yes, so the album begins with a piece by Alice Coltrane for harp and strings that she recorded and released in 1971. It's called Radhe Shyam, and it's about Krishna and his beloved. I wanted the album, as a lot of my programs or works, to begin in a spirit of love, and so that's really what that work is about, the union between those two. And then we go right into River Jordan, which is a compilation, an arrangement of mine of two spirituals. The first, I'm going down to the River Jordan, and that goes right into an improvisation based on Deep River, which is the third track. So even within these three tracks, if you look at them, there's a lot of different musical styles that I tap into. For me, what connects them together is this sense of spirituality, this sense of oneness, and kind of always searching for freedom and hope and just something better. And that's something that water often represents in a lot of different cultures.
Beautiful. In terms of projects looking ahead, what else is on your horizon now that this album is out? And I'm assuming that this is going to be a great catalyst for a lot of other things to come. So, kind of
That's the
what's
hope.
down the pipe?
Yeah, so, the like you said, the album is out, and we are working hard on promoting it, just, reminding listeners to keep tuning in and just expanding our audiences, so that's something that we're working on currently. In terms of what's coming next, I wanna take the show on the road, so that's we're working on those details, for next season, and most of my projects take about 2 to 4 years to germinate, so to speak, so, I've begun thinking about what my next album will be and what some of that music will be. And on my downtime this summer, I will probably spend a good deal amount of that working on new arrangements.
If we kind of circle back though to the current "Take Me to the Water," how do you see this as kind of a not a written statement is the wrong word, but kind of an
Mm,
artistic statement, I should say,
mhm,
for where we find ourselves in the world
mm.
and with the numerous conflict that we see worldwide right now?
I guess unfortunately, I couldn't have anticipated the current social and political and geopolitical climates that we find ourselves trying to figure out today. Again, the album, because it draws from so many different styles of music, different cultures, but they are connected on many different levels, it's a reminder of our shared humanity. And that's something that I hope listeners take the time to reflect on, that there is more that connects us than divides us. And we need that reminder more than ever. And, on top of that, or maybe in addition to that, we also need to take time for beauty. I hope listeners just enjoy the music because there still is a place for that experience today.
That's fascinating you talk about beauty because I totally agree with you, first of all. I
Yeah.
love this concept of beauty, and I don't think a lot of people
Thanks.
think about that enough.
Yeah.
And they're talking about other things, but really, why can't we
Hmm.
just celebrate beauty for beauty's sake in a way?
Right. Yeah.
Um, but can you speak to that a little bit more? I'm curious to hear your riff on your kind of thought process behind that.
Music can be enjoyed on so many different levels. And when I'm programming, again, albums or concerts, I'm trying to bring in as many or trying to give something to as many different types of listeners as possible. So, for those who just want to take a moment and step back and escape the current situation, whatever that person is going through, if my music can be of comfort, provide some sort of sense of peace for 5 minutes, then I will have done my job, and I felt like I've succeeded as an artist in that, and so then that's where the beauty lies. That's the wonderful gift that we have as artists, is to provide that sense of comfort to listeners.
Pivoting just a little bit, and if we speak
Mhm.
about the harp as an instrument and just as
Yeah.
it fits into the landscape of music,
Yeah.
around various genres, as well as just the classical world,
Mhm. Mhm.
obviously it's a real singular instrument. There's plenty more violinists and pianists, I
Yes.
think, than there are harpists.
Yes, yes.
For example. So, what are your thoughts on that, on the harp's kind of modern day role?
Well, first, I'm always amazed that I was introduced to the harp because it's my instrument. It's where I can be most clear in my thoughts and on how I want to communicate to the world. And so when I think about my instrument, I like to think about its global history. It's one of the oldest instruments in the world, and it exists in every culture, right? There aren't other instruments that really have that same kind of lineage. And so when you tap into that rich history and all of the different timbres that the different harps make and the different roles that harpists play in these different cultures, it just opens up for me the sonic possibilities for what my instrument can do.
I think our listeners would be fascinated with what you just said earlier, and that is that it existed in other cultures and, way back probably millennia, et cetera. So can you kind of break that down a little bit? Because that's actually quite revealing. I don't think it hits people that way.
Mm,
People when
mhm.
people think of a harp, I don't know, they probably think about some sort of cartoon angel or something on a cloud. Like, you know what I mean? It's not
Right.
necessarily this idea of connecting thread throughout history and throughout, 1,000+ years.
Just personally speaking, growing up in the church, I was often reminded that King David played the harp, so dating back to biblical times. A couple of months ago, I had the privilege of seeing the oldest surviving harp frame, which was discovered in the ancient site of the city of Ur in Mesopotamia. I can't give you how old it is, but it's like really, really old. So that just kind of gives you an example of just how far back it goes. And in terms of different cultures, it exists in West African cultures. You have the kora, you have the Ngoni harp, which is played in parts of Africa. Those harpists are the storytellers. They're kind of the holders of history. In Venezuela, harp is considered one of the most important instruments in their musical culture. It's kind of like the centerpiece of maybe what we think of as a rhythm section. And so the list just goes on of how it's developed and but also retained its history as a storytelling instrument.
It's so cool. Really, really cool to think about. It's not something, even for me personally, it doesn't hit
Yeah,
me like that all the time, when I
yeah.
think of the harp. Okay, let's move on to a different section here on the podcast, and that is
Okay.
roadblocks that you feel that you
Mm,
have hit along the way and how you overcame them. As any artist, no matter what instrument, or if you're a singer, you're always, going to find yourself hitting that roadblock, and you have to pass through that somehow and
yes.
get the other side. So, how has that kind of transpired for you?
As I was finishing up my career as a student, and I was a student for a very long time, so, I really was thinking a lot about what the next steps would be. I did face some challenges, and I was concerned that I wouldn't be able to finish my dissertation in time. And remember calling my mother, who is also one of my role models, and I just, I don't know if I can do this. I was scared because she had supported my work for so long, but I was really kind of at a point where I didn't know if my research on Margaret Barnes, who's a Black female composer, would be supported. And she said to me, Ashley, the higher up you go, it's going to be harder for you. You're going to find yourself more and more alone. Hearing that from her kind of let me know how she navigated her own roadblocks without even saying so, and perseverance and staying true to who you are. And so that's something that I make sure that I'm kind of anchored in the principles that I stand on. I'm surrounded by my communities, my villages, my family, because they are my biggest support system. And that allows me to navigate those roadblocks because they're there for everybody, right? I'm not the only one experiencing them, but I do have a unique set of tools that are just mine to kind of keep going.
Last part of the podcast is quick fire round, so just short
Yeah.
answers.
Okay.
What's one talent you have that would surprise our listeners?
I think I'm a pretty good baker. My husband has told me so, and, yeah, if you knew me 10 years ago, you'd be completely surprised because I couldn't cook a thing, but I love baking, and right now we've got 2 desserts. I've got cupcakes and a strawberry cobbler.
I love that. If you could collaborate with any artist, dead or alive, who would it be and why?
I thought about this, and in the middle of the night, I came up with Langston Hughes because even though he was a poet, that was his music. musical language. He loved music and adored music and was always looking for ways to work with artists. And for somebody who was so eloquent with this community and again, the beauty that is Blackness, I would be honored to work with him.
What's the first thing you do in the morning that helps set the tone for your day?
Okay, two things. I avoid my phone for at least 30 minutes to keep my head clear, and I work out, whether it's a walk or I'm on my exercise bike. That clears my mind and lets me kind of work on my connection between mind and body, which is something that musicians all need.
And last question, what does success mean to you?
Oh, success as a mother, having my daughter say she's proud of me, then I've done it. I have represented my family well, and I've given her something to look up to.